Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Deloitte Banking Risk Regulatory Academy and our day 4 of this year's event. Let's maybe start with reminding ourselves where we are in our Deloitte Banking Academy. On the day first, we set the stage with an overview of regulatory updates and supervisory priorities, grounding us in the key expectations shaping the agenda for banks across Europe. Then on the second day, we went into the foundations of data-driven supervision with new regulations that are coming. Yesterday, we have covered and explored next generation AML strategies, looking at how institutions can navigate evolving requirements around AML with greater confidence and readiness to be prepared for what also is coming in the future. And today, I think this is my favorite subject, considering I deal with AI every day and spent last 3 years doing this 100% of my time. We'll be talking about the artificial intelligence and digital transformation in banking. I will speak around the agenda of today in a few moments. And then we have one more day planned for tomorrow when we'll dive into payments innovation and digital euro and look into how e-money tokens and the digital euro are shaping the financial landscape. Also strongly encourage you to register if you have not yet. Well, how to make the most of today? We encourage you to take active participation. We are here for you. Of course, we have slides. We are consultants. But if you have questions and would like to hear more, there is a question. You can question this in the Q&A box. And we have some time to answer the questions for you. And you can also use the chat. And yes, we are recording, so this recording will be available for you to listen, and we also will share all the content that will be presented today, so you don't need to take screenshots. We will be sharing the full presentation with you with no edits. And before we go into the content today, I will quickly introduce my colleagues and experts in the field that will be speaking today. We have Simina, a partner from Romania, who will talk today about the practical use cases on applying risk management and legal aspects of compliance into AI based on the experience we have from the projects from Europe. And she will be sharing some practical overview. Gregor will cover what's coming with AI Act and all the regulations that are ahead of us, behind us, and what it means for us. He will dive into more details. And Paweł, I think my favorite subject of today is, because this is always what you ask for as well, like, okay, you talk about AI, but show us some. And Paweł and the team will be also providing us at the end with a demo of the solution that we have already implemented in banking, actually, and using it every day. In banking process at scale. So an interesting practical example with a demo that we'll be showing live. So keep your fingers crossed that everything goes right today. With live demos, we're always stressed. Now, I will start with a few words of where we are in AI in banking in Europe, because this is the question we get a lot, right? Like when we start the client conversations with you, the question is where we really are. Are we behind? There is this strong feeling that I think all of us have, that the world is moving in AI so fast, and our enterprises and companies are not that fast. And what it means for us, is it really like what I read on LinkedIn, that everybody's using AI, is it true or not? So a quick overview where we really are, and based on the projects that we're running for our clients, based on our observations from around the world, especially with zoom on Europe. So if we look back in the last 3 years, since the moment the ChatGPT was released at the end of 2022, what has happened in enterprises with AI? The 2023 was the year that I like to call the year of experimentations. There were a lot of proof of concept. The main questions we were getting from our clients was, what use cases are applicable for my sector? What I can do in banking with AI? what are the use cases that we can do. So there was a lot of exploration. There was also a lot of initiatives on collecting this type of use cases across the organizations. And those are the organizations that were starting immediately. So our first clients of ours were basically asking those questions and starting with proof of concept, proof of values. Not much was deployed to production. There was a lot of wave of enthusiasm and experimentation. Then the second in the second year of this new wave of AI in 2024, it was the year of strategizing. There was an understanding that we need a new approach to govern all those different use cases, that it is not as simple as we thought. And we've seen the first companies defining the AI strategies, deploying proof of values, and the first deployments of GenAI really deployed across organizations were happening in 2024. Then last year, and I think we're still in this stage, is where the most advanced, we've seen the most advanced of the banking clients of ours deploying at scale. That means that whole departments or the whole lines of businesses were able to use AI in the organization, and the AI was embedded into the process, not only given as a let's say chat window. And for the first time, we see also that clients are reporting some value being realized. What's coming next? We will see. It's a world that is moving very fast. But now with agentic AI, we expect that we'll start seeing the first autonomous processes where some of the processes within banking will be semi-autonomously running across the organizations, and maybe even like we've seen the wave of fintechs with the digital revolution, with AI revolution, we might see some financial institutions, financial new players being nearly fully autonomous with a little much lower number of human workers and much higher number of the digital workers in the future. Now, this is what I see, what we hear, what we discuss with clients, but we have also run 2 reports that I'll be sharing some insights from that are sharing exact details that we gained also from you. The first one was run in Europe, in largest geographies of Europe. You can see that 15 countries were covered with over 1,800 participants, and those were enterprises. What we mean by that the revenues of the surveyed companies and executives were over $500 million and employing at least 1,000 people. So we're talking about complex organizations, complex enterprises of scale that are and the people who were surveyed were decision makers in the field related to AI, and they already started with it. So it's not like that there were no AI in the organizations. And we were asking about a lot of questions about the return on investment, what it means where we are. And some of them I will present to you, but I encourage you also to have a look into the study yourself, and it's you can use the QR code on this slide. Let's go to the first. For the first time from our report. Now, the key takeaways, the things I've chosen to present to you today, which I think are the most significant or the most interesting. Now, 91% of surveyed organizations are planning to increase investments in AI, and already 6, and you can argue if this is high or not, but 6% are reporting that they are achieving return on investment in less than 12 months from the investment itself, which is, I think, pretty fast. And the expectation is that by 62% of surveyed companies that they will realize return on investment in 2 to 4 year horizon. The second interesting insight is that that the expectation is now, as we are moving to scale, that 38% of the surveyed companies are expecting the value within 1 year return on investment of GenAI, with agentic AI being much lower. as only 10%, expectations is that only 10% of those will bring this value. Now, the next interesting insight is that the most successful organizations are differentiating how they measure return on investment for different types of AI, and I think that's a best practice. But it's the last insight you can see on this slide is also talking about the fact that it's quite hard to measure return on investment from AI because it is so often very entangled into the broader business transformation. That's why, on one hand, it's becoming very important because the decision makers are requesting that. They want to understand how the investments, which are now pretty significant, what they are bringing to the business. On the other, it's quite hard to isolate them from the broader transformation. Therefore, what we see is that differentiating how we measure that becomes more and more important. What is not surprising, you will see this also in the second report that I will be presenting, that the biggest barriers to return on investment are not the technology or the complexity of it, but the something that we call foundational capabilities, such as like inadequate data infrastructure, fragmented systems, and hardness of applying it and changing our organizations, which is not surprising. We're talking about enterprises. We often say that AI is moving with enterprise speed in enterprises, not with technology speed. So basically, the complexity of our organizations is having impact on our ability to get return on investment. Now, also in the top performing organizations, we see that AI is part of the corporate strategy and with full accountability of C-suite, with 97% of companies reporting that, which is I think a sign that this is becoming a strategic topic, and no surprise here. Let's look into few of this data in more details. First, we see that what is the budget allocated actually to AI, and we see that over 50% of organizations already allocate more than 10% of the budget to AI, which I think is quite significant looking where we are. And what we see in practice is that once companies cross this 10% threshold, the nature of internal discussion is changing. It is becoming much less about individual tools and much more about which processes, functions, P&Ls need to be redesigned with the AI in the center. At this point, AI is spending behaves like an operating model of investment rather than a discretionary technology line. So we're basically seeing this shift happening already. And what is also changing for those organizations that report a higher investment is that the maturity travels with where the executive teams, such as CIO, CTO, is involved with a clear ownership of AI agenda in those organizations and very clear priorities. Moving to the next one, we also see that not only companies are spending quite significant money, but most of them, if not all, are planning to spend more in the next 12 months. And what we see that is clearly a sign that AI is becoming integral to how European enterprises operate and how they want to compete in the future. If we go to the next one. I already mentioned that the fact that that we have C-suite involved pretty much in all those transformational programs based on AI. What is significant is also that 10% of organizations report that CEO is, and considering those are large enterprises, it is quite rare to see a CEO being responsible for technology agenda, which signals to us that enterprises in Europe are treating this subject as the strategic matter, not a technology-only transformation. And let's go to the next one. Now, also, you can see here that the executive-led initiatives are becoming a norm in Europe, which again signals that we are moving from this sort of bottom-up ideas and use cases to top-down driven transformations. So those are the key insights from our report. I encourage you to have a look into this if you're interested. What companies across Europe are talking about in terms of the return on investment from AI. This was its very first report, but we have even one that was published just recently in Davos. And this is the state of AI for 2026, and with a global reach, not only focused on Europe, with over 3,000 direct level to C-suite level respondents across 24 countries. And just to highlight the key areas, which I believe it's are of significance and can be interesting to you. Let's go to the next slide. Some of them are repetitions or very similar to what we have seen. But let's focus on a few that are significant here. The productivity versus reimagination. I think the key of getting return on investment is reimagination of the processes. But today, in number 2, you can see that only 34% of companies are really using it in this way today. So it's still not majority of the businesses are moving into this direction. The same we see in the number 3, that the AI fluency is the key. So companies are focusing today, most of them report focusing on fluency and driving AI education. But there is 84% companies still need to define what it really means, how to redesign the jobs roles around AI, what means the new redistribution of the work between us and the AI agents. What we see, and especially in Europe, this is a trend that is gaining a lot of momentum, is sovereignty of AI. That 77% of companies say that location of AI development is key to selecting the technology. We see this more and more in Europe. I mean, companies really want to use local AI to be sure that the data is secure and that the changes that are being made are in line with the local European regulations in our case. What's interesting about agentic AI, and maybe Gregor and Simina will touch on this as well, that while we see more and more agentic AI use cases, only 1 in 5 companies are reporting to us that they have mature model for agentic governance. A bit worrying. 6, a big surprise to me, that 58% of companies are already using physical AI. When we talk about physical AI, we're talking about AI deployed on devices such as robots, but not only. This is the moment where AI is touching the physical space with solutions like cameras, drones, and different types of robots. So it's interesting to see that, of course, we're not surprised that Asia Pacific is leading the adoption of robots. We see a lot of deployments in Asia, and that's also confirmed by my colleagues from Asia Pacific region. While 42% declare readiness of enterprises, what we see that now we realize in our companies that we're not as prepared as we thought, and the preparedness shifted down from the last year, especially in the areas such as technical infrastructure, data management, and talent. So we realized that our data infrastructure and talent is not as prepared as we thought. And I think with this, I will hand over to Gregor, who will tell us more about the EU Act and the risk management aspects of AI.
Thank you, Jan. Good morning to everybody. So AI regulation is slowly coming into its enforcement phase, or at least an application phase. It's not completely there yet, but the developments that we are seeing over the past years and what we will see in this year is the consequence of ongoing transformation that is evident in the technological aspects that were explained by Jan. AI regulation is not a result of a previous legal or regulatory vacuum. Also, previously, we've seen that the development and use of AI were already subject to various legal and regulatory obligations for most data protection and liability issues, also cybersecurity, etc. The EU AI Act harmonizes some of the existing approaches and creates specific requirements for risk-based systems and for their operators, meaning developers and deployers. Next slide, please. The idea behind the EU AI Act is to encourage ethical application of AI throughout European Union, which would be based on harmonized processes and roles which ensure adequate quality, safety, and security throughout the life cycle of artificial intelligence. Its aim is similar to other product safety regulations and legal frameworks, and it tends to incorporate single standards across the EU to prevent fragmentation of the market and enforce the rules through conformity declarations and obligations, which at minimum require conformity assessments and compliant regimes, which are shown through CE markings and registration for so-called high-risk systems. But it, as we will see in the next slides, it also addresses other AI systems. The goal is to ensure legal certainty that encourages innovation and investment into AI, while at the same time protects the EU and its citizens. The AI Act was adopted in the summer of 24, and its aim was to start enforcing the rules of high-risk systems in 26. The systems which were put in place before the deadlines which are set in the timeline of the AI Act are not subject to compliance unless they undergo certain changes, modifications. And due to this, it is, especially as we've seen, the development of the technology influences the existing systems. It's advisable that they're applied already in advance, because going backwards, changing the documentation or preparing the documentation for the existing systems might be more difficult than preparing them in advance. Next slide, please. So talking about the deadline, initially, it was adopted in 24, and some of the provisions already came into effect in February 25, so a year ago. Prohibited practices, which are the unacceptable practices envisaged by the AI Act, have been prohibited since February 25, and also in that period, AI literacy clauses or requirements were put into effect. What that means is companies are already obliged to instruct and invest in the knowledge of their employees, so they know what kind of tools they are not allowed to use, what can they expect from the use of AI tools, so that the accountability in the companies is clearly formulated, so that if your employees are using AI for something that is unacceptable, that this is the responsibility of the company, not only of the employees. You need strict programs to instruct them and policies to show what they can use and what they should not use, so that the liability does not go directly to the company because it didn't provide such instructions. At the same time, literacy serves as a tool to help the companies evolve different programs, both in terms of development of the systems and also finding the adequate employees for training and use of the systems. In August 25, codes of conducts were adopted for so-called general purpose AI systems. And in August 26, high-risk systems, which also include some of the systems that are in use by the banks, were intended to be enforced. The rules for these systems were intended to be enforced. Due to the technological developments and also the lack of the development of the technical standards by the European Standardization Organization, there is currently a proposal for the digital omnibus that also considers the postponement of the enforcement of the high-risk system timeline for a year and a half. So the high-risk systems, which were supposed to be enforced in August 26, the proposal currently is that the deadline should be in December 27. And in August 28 for the high-risk systems, which were already regulated, which is so-called Annex 1. And the proposal is currently set for August 28. These proposals for digital omnibus are not yet decided. There is ongoing discussions between the Commission, Council, and the European Parliament, and we will see in the forthcoming month whether this will be implemented. Next slide, please. So when we're talking about regulation of AI systems according to the AI Act, we're looking at a pyramid of systems based on a so-called risk-based approach. The bulk of the systems are non-regulated systems, which are here shown as other use cases. Still, these are to be subject to voluntary application. As we've seen in the presentation of Jan, companies are realizing that governance is an important aspect of using AI if it is to align with their business goals. Regulatory goals or regulatory risks are just one part of the risks that we're seeing with the use of AI. And AI Act is primarily focused on the safety and security of EU citizens and application of fundamental rules in the use of AI. But it is creating a framework that can be easily expanded to also address other risks. But the risks that are being considered by the AI Act are those that impact the fundamental values and rights of citizens and prohibit, for example, social scoring, exploitation of vulnerabilities, or subliminal manipulation of customers. These are, for example, systems that can also be used in banking, either to intentionally, but this is less likely, or as a result of inadvertent decisions or inappropriate governance practices. Companies should take a look at what kind of systems they are using and what are their risks and implications to see if there is a risk of them using some, especially GenAI systems in combination with communication with the clients that can be classified as unacceptable. High-risk systems are most clearly labeled as those that require compliance and have started to be addressed by the banks and insurance companies and also by the regulators. They're clearly designated as being part of compliance regimes when it comes to access to essential services in terms of credit or risk scoring. But those that also apply relate to employment and use of biometrics. These require compliance requirements ex ante, and you need adequate policies and procedures to ensure that you are developing and using them in line with the regulation. At the same time, clear transparency obligations are required for so-called chatbots and call centers. They do not require as many compliance related adjustments as high-risk systems, but they still need to fall within the same compliance framework. Majority of cases, as I said, will not fall under the umbrella of conformity assessments and compliance requirements. For example, systems that are used for preventive maintenance, inventory management, spam filters, also IT security. But it is advisable to look at them from a comprehensive policy because this saves on costs and increase the likelihood of effectiveness. Next slide, please. If we look from the perspective of continuous evolvement, continuous development, and as we've seen, the AI regulation is not coming from a previous legal vacuum, and so does not AI governance fall into the aspect of previous vacuum. It means adaptation or adjustment of the previous systems. AI systems, according to the AI Act, will need to, those that fall within the scope of high-risk systems, will need to have adequate technical documentation, which will prove both legal compliance and will be leveraged for transparency vis-a-vis its users, for user instructions, support for human oversight, etc. They will need to show adequate accuracy levels, robustness, and cybersecurity levels. They will need to be part of the existing risk management systems that need to be adapted to the new environment. Data governance has already been in place, but needs to be reviewed and adjusted to the needs of AI systems, not only GDPR. The systems will need to have already embedded record keeping and logging capabilities, and these need to be monitored throughout its use to enable post-market monitoring and incident prevention. This means that both developers and deployers, and when it comes to banks, they often serve both roles. They're both in the position of developers of the systems that they need and want, and users of those systems. So they need to have an integrated approach to the requirements of the regulators and align them with their business needs. They need to adapt their governance and accountability frameworks, and they need to adjust their risk classification and management systems. Similarly, they need to adjust data governance and management systems so that they have the basis both to use the systems in a way that they intend to use them and to leverage this for compliance needs and the needs of their downstream clients or users. In practice, this means adaptation of procedures and policies related to IT inventory. They need to have ability to classify systems as AI systems according to the AI Act. They need to adjust their IT change management systems, security, risk management, etc. And we will see in the subsequent slides presented by Simina what this means in practice. Looking only at regulatory requirements is a narrow scope. And going back to what Jan was saying, technology is developing all the time. And what we're seeing with agentic AI is actually what is in the precise scope of what the AI Act was intended to cover when it set the definition of AI as one of the foundations for what is in the scope of regulatory control. AI needs to have autonomy it needs to have this agentic scope, and agentic is clearly within the scope of the AI Act. But how do we ensure that we are looking at it from a policy and procedural way in an adequate manner, so that we're not looking at it only as IT, but something that affects the whole institution? This is where it comes to the need for us to create adequate policies and procedures. And if we do not do this correctly, we are at risk of using the systems in ways that can be unacceptable. And then we fall into this penalty regime that can go up to 7% of annual global revenue. Or at the minimum, we risk having incorrect, incomplete, or misleading information when it comes to documentation, and this goes to 1% or 7.5 million euro penalties. How we approach this in some use cases, I leave this to Simina, and I'm available for any questions afterwards. Simina, please.
Thank you, Gregor. Good morning, everyone. Happy to share some of our experience in implementing or helping clients on the journey of compliance with the AI Act across our region. I will start by saying that the financial institutions are the early adopters of the EU AI Act compliance framework and all the obligations herein. I guess that's no surprise to our audience today. Among the financial institutions, we also see variation in terms of where institutions are on the implementation journey. The key factor that determines where a certain institution is actually the tech landscape at the institution, and specifically the level or perceived level of penetration of AI across systems and applications used at the bank. We see the most digital savvy players being really keen to ensure that the AI that they use complies with the regulation, at the same time without slowing down business operations. We are seeing this across multiple clients across the region. And while this is, as Gregor explained, still a developing regulatory area, we are still required to develop compliance frameworks, perform gap analysis, design proper monitoring tools that allow, of course, compliance, but also limit the impact on the business operations. This, all by being difficult and sometimes challenging, we're going to talk about this quickly, did help clients be ready for the AI Act and have flexible and scalable governance frameworks and a proper implementation plan for what comes next in terms of compliance with the EU AI Act. If we move to the following slide, there are a couple of things that are important to plan for. Of course, there's never enough time spent on planning. Very importantly, internal alignment of various stakeholders, identifying the right stakeholders internally and aligning objectives and expectations, having a proper plan aligned with the implementation schedule of the AI Act as this evolves, as Gregor said, and of course, following and properly projecting the work plan. Then it's very important on how we approach methodology. There's methodology for a couple of things. First of all, how we make the inventory of the AI systems, how we qualify as an IT system as an AI system under the AI Act, which is more complex than it initially seems. And then how we assess risk related to the systems on the basis of the requirements of the AI Act. and also how we classify the AI systems on the basis of the risk categories. Of course, with all regulatory compliance topics, a gap analysis in terms of where there are perceived compliance gaps with the AI Act, but also as we've seen in practice, a number of gray areas in terms of compliance with the AI Act and the evolving landscape. Of course, followed by a clear implementation roadmap. What follows, of course, is designing and implementing a governance framework, mindful, of course, of group level governance frameworks and local requirements or local specifics, which might be different in the various jurisdictions. Proper governance structures with clear roles, responsibilities for both oversight, but also, very importantly, ensuring cross-teams collaboration and accountability. Then, as Gregor touched upon some of these obligations, we have to have a number of templates, which, as best as possible, they need to be future-proof and ensure flexibility both for future technology development, but also for the evolving regulation and standards. So these are conformity assessments, fundamental rights impact assessments, human oversight guidelines, data quality guidelines, and templates for contractual provisions, both where the institution is the AI provider or the deployer of third-party systems. If we move on to the next one, please. Of course, this is I shared some key deliverables to have in mind and to plan for, but we are still evolving in an uncertain regulatory landscape, which is still evolving both in terms of deadlines, but also actually clarity of the guidance and standards to be followed. I briefly touched upon this earlier, but the technical classification is a significant challenge not to be underestimated. And we've seen this as an area where actually involving both technical experts and legal experts in interpreting the requirements of the AI Act for the definition of what really an AI system is something not to be underestimated and to have to be properly accounted for in terms of the planning process and the implementation process. The methodology for the risk assessment is an important challenge as well, particularly because this type of risk assessment, as required under the EU AI Act, was not required before, so it is an area of novelty for the teams. Something that all regulatory compliance projects require clarity in terms of roles and responsibilities and accountability in the oversight of AI are key aspects. Particularly, again, in light of the requirements for human in the loop and for human oversight under the AI Act. Last but not least, a challenge of, we call it knowledge transfer, but effectively is translating really complex regulatory language, regulatory requirements into practical and operational guidance, which the teams who are not specialists in regulation or technology would need to operate on a daily basis in terms of using the system. So important note on spending sufficient time on making sure that all the templates that we talked about previously are really easy to use by non-specialists, and they can apply them in practice and with confidence on the day-to-day to make sure that really the framework developed is operationalized. To conclude with a couple of lessons learned, the complexity of these projects do require multidisciplinary teams, both from the advisor side, if you select one, but also internally. So risk management, cybersecurity, legal, regulatory are key competencies that need to be involved in these projects. It's very important that stakeholder alignment is obtained from the beginning, and there's clarity on the objectives, on the expectations, on the priorities, and also on the risk appetite, particularly in this evolving regulatory landscape. To my point earlier on the knowledge transfer, we suggest interactive workshops, participation from various specialty areas at the bank and from various teams, in making sure that the methodology is really well understood and the practical classification of use cases is really demonstrated and becomes part of the day-to-day. And then, of course, last but not least, the interplay between frameworks that we can have at group level and the local adaptation that are needed, both from as I said, tech landscape and tools perspective, but also from the perspective of local regulatory requirements, which would come from the national authorities for the AI Act, but also, as Gregor started his presentation, this does not come in a vacuum. So we need to make sure that what we are developing for the AI Act compliance does fit with the local data privacy, cyber, employment law, and other regulations. So hopefully a couple of useful lessons learned and experiences. And without further delay, we can go into the real practical case with Paweł and the team.
Thank you very much, Simina. Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for having me here today. Before we go into the live demo, just a couple of words of explanation what we tried to do and what we tried to build. So basically, my primary focus for last couple of years is supporting our financial institutional clients with the anti-money laundering. And actually, speaking about anti-money laundering, for me, it is one of the operational process, and actually one of the operational process in every financial institution that basically takes lots of time for onboarding of the customer, especially in the corporate segment, for regular periodic review of the customer files and basically collection of all those information. This basically takes huge amount of time. And when we analyze, which of those elements connected to KYC is the most time consuming, we definitely had a thought that this initial part, so collection of the documentation, analysis of the documentation, building the org chart for the corporate client, but also identification of the ultimate beneficial owner is most probably 50–60% of the time that we spend on analysis of those cases. One more comment over here, because basically, of course, advisory is very often, associated with presentations and trying to share, let's say, the knowledge with our clients. But on the other hand, it wouldn't be enough to build what, let's say, we are presenting over here today, because for us, the starting point was realization of those processes in a manual way in the past, and it created, let's say, the baseline, the knowledge that we needed to define what automations do we need to speed up this process. So basically, Owner Finder, because this is the name of the solution that we've created, is a combination of traditional IT and GenAI. Traditional IT, because basically the steps that we tried to automate refers to the elements that could be traditionally also in the past automated. First element, which I already mentioned, is automatic connection to the court registries, This is doable in majority of the cases. Some of them are having APIs that allow, let's say, automatic connection and acquiring of the information directly from the registries. So this is definitely the step that we automated, but without GenAI usage, basically referring to traditional IT solutions. The second step, and this is also very, very important, analysts usually spend lots of time on analyzing the documents. So basically the court registration documents, they are looking over there for information regarding the ownership structure, proxies, directors, managers. So all those information in the past were looked in the manual way. And over here for this step, we decided to use GenAI because GenAI is actually a technology that allows us to acquire this information from the unstructured, complicated legal documents in a more automated way. So this step is definitely GenAI automated. What happens afterwards is basically, again, more traditional IT. We understand the risks connected with any kind of a assessment of the client using GenAI. We don't do this. We basically created a set of rules determining how to identify the chain of control, how to identify the chain of ownership for the individual entity, and how to put it, how to transform it into the organizational structure and additional information that we need basically for this step connected to the UBO analysis. So this is basically what we tried to do, what we achieved. So right now we are having connections to 13 data sources, those country registries, Dun & Bradstreet, which we use as additional source information, but definitely this list may be and will be extended in the future. On the other hand, it helped us to speed up the process. Actually, the result that we received in comparison to the manual process is quite successful, at least in our assessment, because we speeded up this process more or less 3 times. Our expectations were definitely much smaller, but also 2 additional effects that were less obvious, at least from the very beginning. So definitely in the documentation that we created back then manually, there may have been errors, typos, wrong calculations, wrong assignments of owners. Basically, with the automation, this is eliminated, and this is something that, let's say, should be kept under the control. But also one more side effect that basically, perhaps it's not the most obvious, but again, is a benefit of the GenAI technology. So from the human perspective, of course, it's crucial from which country registry we are acquiring the documents, what is the language of those documents, how to understand them. On the other hand, for GenAI, it's absolutely no difference. So basically, we can read the documents which are created, which are prepared in almost any language. On the other hand, we can also transfer this information to any kind of a language and put the result, as you will see over here, in English. So this is actually what's happening over here. But here, Wojtek, I would give the floor to you. Today there is Wojciech Sitasz, who will be running the demo. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Paweł, for this introduction. I know we have just a few moments, so let me already invite you to contact us for more detailed demo. However, now I will focus just on a few, I guess, crucial benefits of our solution. Firstly, what Paweł already said, we have integration with dozens of European registries, and we rely only on the reliable sources. So commercial registry extracts, official documents, which are, and that would be a second, I guess, crucial benefits of our solution. is downloaded for your further use, and also they are downloaded in this very moment when you request it. So it is always up to date. It is always taken from the source, from the official registry in the moment of reviews. And here, for example, what you see is just a typical example of the structure. We have started from the company registered in Germany. And for this entity, as said, we have downloaded documents. We have downloaded official documents, official commercial registry, and also sometimes scanned documents regarding the ownership. And based on that, we are drilling down, our tool is drilling down the structures as long as they have some kind of data available. So here, for example, from Germany, we came to Poland, downloaded another registry, reviewed this registry in an automatic way, and follow the path, the ownership path to, for example, Austria here, and at the very end identified the very beneficial owner. As said, we are relying on the official documents. We can also connect with some database like Dun & Bradstreet. But what Paweł briefly mentioned, we are not asking AI for the response. We are not asking AI who is the owner of the entity. We are rather extracting data using LLMs and then process this in a form of traditional algorithm created based on our know-how.
Wojtek, there is a question I think you can maybe answer. What was the percentage of hallucinations for KYC beneficial ownership finder, and which safeguards were implemented to avoid minimize that?
Thank you, Jan, for this question. Yeah, that's very, very good elements. We are a people of compliance. We have created the tool for us, so we know that minimalization of any errors, any hallucinations is very crucial. So actually, we do not include any registry if on the testing phase the level of accuracy is lower than 90%. However, in fact, in the real life, in the real usage of this tool, that level of, let's say, machine errors, hallucinations, is lower than 1%. Why? Because, as I already said, we are not using AI to respond. We are using AI to extract the data, and this data is then processed by our systems. Of course, we have a bunch of safe elements, some kind of logic to check percentage whether there are any anomalies in this. So thanks to that, it is always that accuracy level is, of course, it is not 100% in any automatic solution. It won't be. However, it is close to that level. Moreover, and it is, let's say, third bigger benefits of our solution is that it is not only a structure, it is not only a bunch of information and beautiful structure, ownership structure, but it is ready for the review of our analyst. The human in the loop is designed in the process from the very beginning. So analyst can, of course, check not only information, but also every document that has been downloaded. And then, of course, edit information if they will notice some kind of irregularities, some kind of information, or they could simply edit this to add more information, to extend that part. So that's also one of the elements that helps us to maintain compliant. So, for example, if I would like to add some new connections, some additional layers of the structure, I can relatively easily add additional sources to extend the structure, to change the structure and go beyond that automatic level. So that's in a nutshell what the beneficial ownership finder is, what are the crucial benefits. However, as I said, being aware of time, I strongly encourage you to contact us to organize a demo, and then we can, of course, discuss this in more details, how you can use our solution and our competences. Yeah, Margarita, over to you.
One question, if I may try shortly to answer that, because indeed AML directive is requiring not only, let's say, to focus on control, but also not only on the shareholding, but also on the control. At the moment, the level of control and let's say all the elements connected to the control may be added manually to this set of the information. But on the other hand, for the time being, the elements of control is not automated. We are thinking about that for the future, but for the time being, this is the decision of, let's say, a person reviewing the case to add appropriately the elements connected with control and any rights arising from that.
However, if you
Thank you, Paweł. Thank you, Wojtek. I think we're out of time. We need to finish with respect to our attendees. Thank you, Simina and Gregor as well. And thank you, all the listeners. We hope you enjoyed that. If you have any further questions, please reach out to us. It was a pleasure. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much.